I was muted. What a bad intro. Hey everyone, my name is Bryce Kuhn. Welcome in to the crowded booth. Will Mann is going to be joining me here in just a second. As today we get to talk, and tonight, wherever you're watching or you're watching after, you're listening to it on podcast form, do what Matt says and hit that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel. As tonight we go through every single ACC team. Yeah, 17 of them. It's going to be a long one. So pile on in, get ready, like the stream, head over to the comment section and get ready for what's going to be a fun one. ACC football, best and worst case scenarios for each team in a conference that we think is probably going to cannibalize itself and going to be a fun 2024. That and more on tonight's episode of The Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Kuhn.
Well, hello. Welcome in. My name is Bryce Kuhn. I'm alongside Will Mannis on a fine Tuesday evening, not our normally scheduled live show, but yesterday was the wife's birthday. Had to take her out to a delectable dinner of Chick-fil-A. Will, when you have a wife that's pregnant and she just wants to throw on sweatpants and a sweatshirt and her favorite food is Chick-fil-A, that's where you go. And then you go to Hobby Lobby afterwards and buy a bench for the living room. So that's what we did. How's your beginning of the week been so far?
It's been good. Got a lot of work done today in preparation for the show. How long did we work on that? Like 3-4 hours? So
this is detailed.
We've earned some likes, I think. So I'm just ready to get into it. 17, it's going to be a long one. Why wait? Why mess around?
Why mess around? Hey, before we do get started, we do want you to like the video if you're on YouTube. We want you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Head over there. If you're listening to this, by the way, if you're listening to this, is a perfect episode to listen to in about an hour and a half, drive. This is going to be great. This is the content you want to be learning. Will is actually driving to Atlanta right after this, so he's just going to pop it back in and re-listen to it himself. But hey, we are going to be talking the full ACC. This is, I'd argue, Will, we are going to be more detailed in the ACC teams than we were in the SEC last week. Just what it is. Now, I think we might be. I think it might be. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you jump in if you're on Twitter. Follow us over there as well. Facebook, too. Make sure you like it and you share it with your friends. All right. Here we go. First team. We're going alphabetically here. Will, you can bring up the banners. We also have the over-under win total. That's Boston College. The Eagles of Chestnut Hill. Let's just kind of start here. You have an over-under win total per Bet Online, 4.5 wins there. We just kind of start with this, Will. Bill O'Brien is the head coach. We were not a massive fan.
Absolutely hate it.
Yeah, we weren't a massive fan of this. So let's kind of start off your thoughts on Boston College. And, we're going to take a look at that schedule as we kind of look at two, because we're going best case, worst case. The Vegas has the over-under set at 4.5, which is, we did our tiers. I think this is a bottom barrel ACC team.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They had a very busy offseason, as one does when your head coach leaves after the bowl game to go be a coordinator in the NFL. Wild stuff from Jeff Hafley there. So they bring in Bill O'Brien, like you said, a guy that knows the Northeast, worked many, many years with New England Patriots. So you think on paper it kind of makes sense, but then you remember what he's done as a head coach. Mm-hmm. And especially in college. I mean, he had a good stint at Penn State, but his stint as Alabama's offensive coordinator, very underwhelming. I won't get into what all he did in the NFL. That's been highly publicized. I think everybody knows about that. Looking at his coordinators, he brings in Tim Lewis, longtime defensive coach, spent a lot of time with the Giants and the Steelers. I guess they're going to transition to a 3-4, which from what I was reading kind of fits their roster better than a 4-3 would. They've got good playmakers at linebacker and defensive line, so that will help them there just to make those players make plays. They don't have a ton of talent on this roster, although I'll get into a second. They brought in a lot. But offensive coordinator is going to be a guy named Will Lawing, I think is how you say it. He was the Patriots tight ends coach most recently, viewed as an up-and-comer in the business. So to me, that means Bill O'Brien's going to be running that offense. Brings this guy in to kind of help him game plan and things like that. But O'Brien's going to basically be running the offense. So look at who they brought in, man. Two really good wide receivers. Jaron Bradley from Texas Tech, big 6'5", just nightmare to cover. Career at Texas Tech, really good, 92 catches, over 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. Had a really great 2022. Took a step back last year. And Jaden McGowan from Vanderbilt, just kind of a speedster, do-it-all receiver. Described as a special teams ace.
Yeah.
They bring in some help on the defensive side. Bryquise Brown from Georgia State, Ryan Turner from Ohio State, Stead McDonald to beef that defensive line comes in from Illinois. So, but their quarterback returns Thomas Castellanos, really good running the ball last year, which you'll see as a theme of the ACC. These quarterbacks, they run the ball pretty well. Over 1,100 yards on the ground last year, 13 touchdowns, but he threw 14 interceptions, second most in the ACC. But, for Boston College to have a lot more success this year, their defense is going to have to be better. Like I said, I think that 3-4, the book on Lewis is that he's an aggressive defensive guy. So the defense is going to have to be better. That 3-4 should put them in better position. Before we get into the schedule, I think Vegas is spot on right there with that 4.5 wins. They're going to be right around that number. I think they're going to be a little bit better than that, but Vegas always knows, and I think they hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, I mean, look, you kind of laid out, I mean, what they were doing. Momentum coming off a bowl win, that was good for them. Will, when we looked at the floor and the ceiling and, it was a big bowl win there for them. And bowl games are weird, first off, because if teams lose them, we often say, well, it wasn't that big of a deal. If you win them, it is a big deal. So it is, right. I don't know. We kind of have to, gauge that. But I did want to throw up here because I've got the schedule and then our notes that we went through here. You have that nice momentum, but the defense has to be better. And that's also going to be another kind of theme with a team that, a lot of our fans of the show are going to be tuned into. But when you look at what, this ACC has, there isn't necessarily a lot of separation, I feel like, when you go from teams like 4 to 10. Like anything can happen. And that's oftentimes like what the ACC and the Big 12 give you, just kind of bloodbath, through the months of September, October, November. When I look at this schedule, September is going to be a tough month for Boston College, I think, in my opinion, especially with a date against Florida State and Louisville. Now, I will say, Will, is it the Red Ribbon game? What is the game that Boston College plays each year? Red bandana. They almost beat Florida State up there. And I don't think this is as good of a Florida State team, so who knows? But, Castellanos, I think, is a guy that is more than capable of winning you a couple games that you shouldn't. But I don't know if this team's going to be consistent enough on the defensive side of the football. So I know we've got kind of our floor and ceiling here. When you look at this, you've got literally a bye week smack dab in the middle of the schedule, which is kind of crazy to look at. You don't often see it like that. I don't know.
It's a very navigable schedule to me.
Yeah, it's
especially
not
conference schedule.
It is.
You got to go to Florida State. You go to Virginia. Shouldn't be much of a I think
Missouri
on paper they Virginia Tech or Virginia, I should say, and Boston College about the same. Go to Virginia Tech and go to SMU. A lot of home games in conference is what I'm keying in on. But like you said, go to Missouri. That's going to be tough. They host Michigan State, which is an interesting matchup there. Host North Carolina, Pitt, Louisville, Syracuse. So, when I look at them, I'm pegging them their floor at 4-8 and a ceiling of 8-4. Because like you said, they could steal some of these games. Could they go on the road and beat a Virginia? I think it's very possible. We'll get more to SMU schedule. They have that wild travel schedule that Boston College does not have. They don't have to go to the West Coast. So does that play an advantage the furthest west they go? In conference is SMU, but Missouri a little bit further. They could steal a couple games here.
Yeah, they could steal a couple games. It feels like they're going to have to do their damage within the conference. I just don't know how much confidence I have for them to go on, to Far Field and beat Missouri. I'll be honest with you. I don't even know, this is a new Michigan State team they're going to be facing. So I'm kind of sitting there right there with you. I think 4-8 for me is that floor. You could argue 3-9 if we're talking about wheels falling off. I'm going to go, though, 7-5 for my ceiling. I know you went 8-4. But you just kind of look at here. I think this team is a team that can get to a bowl game, can get a game above 500, and then see what happens. if you can get to 6-6, 7-5, and win a bowl game in Bill O'Brien's first year, you do establish some confidence and even more momentum heading into 2025. I think because people are kind of eager to see, like we are, what is Bill O'Brien going to look like at the college level as the CEO of a program in the NIL
Right.
era, at a program that's
Yeah.
not really flush with cash in that area.
Yeah. But you think about what they've got coming back. Castellanos talked about his running game. If he can cut down on those turnovers big. Running back Kai Robichaux comes back. Really, really good player. Kind of surprised he didn't get, I'll say, better NIL opportunities in the portal. So they've got some guys coming back. They added a couple running backs in there to help depth. They brought in Kamari Morales as well, tight end from North Carolina. Morales is the all-time leader for North Carolina receiving for tight ends.
Wow.
And so now he goes to Boston College. So to me, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I like Boston College. I like some of the pieces that they have. You talked about what they brought in. I mean, in college football, the pressure should be on your quarterback. My question, the biggest question mark is they're going to go as far as Castellanos takes them. And we saw, like, look, I mean, I believe you watched the game. I know I did because it was before an LSU game. That Boston College, Georgia Tech game, that was an example of where a game where you went into a place where you probably should have lost, but he found a way because he was just elusive. He's a great athlete. He can do a lot of different things for you well. And when that clicks, you're going to be able to beat some teams that maybe you shouldn't have beaten on paper. So look, I like what Boston College has essentially in coming into the season. I don't think we said they might be a bottom feeder. I think that this conference is just going to be really tough. And I know we joke about it. The ACC is a conference that doesn't have a ton of separation. And so you are going to have, weeks, and unfortunately, there's no more divisions, so we don't have coastal chaos anymore like we usually had. But you're going to have, weeks where the upsets happen. The spreads, they look ridiculous that Vegas would have ever set those. But I like where we sat with that. I mean, it's a bowl team, but worst case scenario, 4-8. I mean, and disappointing.
They made a bowl game last year, and they're bringing back their two biggest pieces on offense. They're adding to the offense, so I think offensively they'll be there. They're going to change their defense. They'll have to adjust early in the year for that, but they were not that bad last year. Now, again, all depends on what Bill O'Brien looks like coming in because it's totally different than Jeff Hafley. But
yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you, friend. I'm with you. Man, we just gave Boston College a lot of love there. We're going to continue to rock and roll through this. We're really used to Ralph is traversing the Hamilton, Georgia area right now. I just checked his location. He's traversing Hamilton, Georgia, trying to get done with his shift. So it's just Will and I tonight here on the show. We're going to Cal. We're going out west. One of the new ACC teams.
Yuck.
Will, this is one that this is one that you got to kind of watch up close and personal a little bit last year.
It was shocking. Some of the stats I saw on Cal last year. So you said it earlier. We were talking that Auburn Cal game last year must have just been a stinker for both teams because it was ugly.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. Got my notes right here, and I'm looking at what Cal brings to the table. I mean, I will tell you, I love their combination of quarterback and running back. I think that's what stands out to me immediately. They bring back a guy like Jaden Ott. He is by far, and you put it here, their biggest offensive weapon, over 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns. They bring in transfer quarterback Chandler Rogers from North Texas, who had a career year. You talk about a guy, he's going to be, I believe, a sixth-year senior. This is his fourth school, counting JUCO when he was at Blinn College. He's a seasoned vet, and I think if you're Cal and you're transitioning to a new conference, it's a transition year. There's no better guy. I know he's not maybe familiar with the system, but a guy who's played a lot of college football and played a lot of snaps, with what he wants to do. So I love what their offense has, and it's another thing where, hey, it was a defense that was in the 100s. Can they be better? But it feels like with Jaden Ott and Chandler Rogers, they're going to get a chance.
They should be a lot better on defense. Justin Wilcox, defensive guy, that's how he got this job, the defense he built at Wisconsin. But their defense was really bad, 114th in total defense last year. In Pac-12, that, I mean, you had a couple good offenses. USC was a good offense, who they almost beat, by the way. You had Oregon out there, but there's not a good enough conference where you're sitting 114th in a major conference like that. Cal added 21 players in the portal this cycle, 15th portal class. big additions coming in on defense. Josiah Wagner from Oklahoma, Ryan Yates, a guy you saw a lot of at LSU.
Yeah.
Seringue Tunkara. I'm
Nice
sure I
job.
butchered that name. Edge rusher from Missouri. Those three guys right there should really improve that defense, improve that pass rush. My big question, looking at their schedule, is how will travel affect this team? They have a 4-game stretch
Oof.
where they go to Florida State. They're off
They get
the
a
next
bye
week.
week. Yeah.
They get a bye. They host Miami, and then they go back cross country to Pitt, and then come home to NC State. That's regardless of travel. That's probably the toughest 4-game stretch on their schedule. And oh, by the way, 2 weeks before that, they got to come play Auburn. So they're going to be traversing back and forth for 6-7 consecutive weeks. How does that affect them, especially in the middle of the season like this? So that 4-game swing is going to mean a lot. So I'm tagging their ceiling at 7-5 and the floor of 3-9. It's really, how does Rogers come in? Can Chandler Rogers come in and win this starting job? Last year at North Texas, 29 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, threw for over 3,300 yards. I don't care what conference you're playing in. That's impressive. Can he come in? Can he improve? Their guy last year, Mendoza, is a true freshman. And you said his offers earlier. This dude's a brainiac.
A genius. It was like FIU, Yale, offers. Harvard. Yeah. I mean, FIU was like the one kind of, this one doesn't belong to his offer list.
Right.
So
that should improve. Quarterback improves. They bring Ott back. But other than that, man, I'm not expecting much from Cal.
Yeah, and I wanted to say this too. And hey, look, we got a new viewer. True Seminole says, interesting ACC content, glad to see it. And then comes right over to the YouTube channel. Cal, welcome to a real conference. True Seminole, welcome to the channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. But no, yeah, we're talking ACC here tonight. And look, you talk about Cal. I said earlier, I was talking with someone who has a North Texas podcast, and he's a North Texas grad. I said, what should I know about Chandler Rogers? Like, what is something I know? And he just said, playmaker. Like, it falls right in line with what Thomas Castellanos can be. And I feel like there's a lot of those quarterbacks in this conference. And so if you have quarterback figured out, then you're going to be able to do some things. And I think that is like the biggest thing that we're trying to harp on here is like, if you have that position figured out, that's super important. Cal, it feels like, has that figured out with who they brought in. Now, is that going to change some of the things defensively? I don't know. Like, we've seen, Georgia Tech fans have seen it. They have seen what it looks like when you don't have the defensive side of the football. It limits to what you can do during the season. And I think that's why we have this ceiling and floor so low. So I'll go ahead and kind of spoil it. And I think we're sitting on the same page here. That ceiling, I think you could find a way to 7 wins. Like, there is a path if things hit right for you. Now, you mentioned that stretch from September 21st really until October 19th, October 26th, and then you get that bye week the first week of November. That's daunting. But look, there's a chance, and I know you don't want to address it. There's a chance if things hit right, you could go into Auburn and win a football game.
There's a very good chance.
Yeah, you could go into Auburn and win a football game. You could, go to Pitt. You're going to hear about what we think about Pitt a little bit later on. It won't be long. Don't worry. The back half of that schedule, I will tell you right now, there's only one game I don't think they win. It's at SMU. I think you can beat Stanford. You could beat Syracuse. Yeah. You get them at home. You could beat Wake Forest. So is there a path to 7 wins? I think that you're sitting there in a situation to where 7-5 is that ceiling. If things go wrong, Chandler Rogers, knock on wood, gets hurt. And just that defense doesn't get figured out, which you kind of talked about as right. Wilcox's bread and butter. 3-9 might be kind of the floor, and that's where I got it.
Yeah, I just think, and this is going to be a theme for every team in the ACC now. What does travel do? How does travel affect? Because we've never seen teams having to go cross country. It'll be the same thing in the Big Ten. How do teams adjust going cross country?
How do they practice during the week? Like, that's going to be a massive thing.
Especially like Cal, they go to Florida State, come home for 2 weeks, play Miami, go back out east to Pitt, and then come back out west, play NC State.
It's ridiculous.
And then those last 4 games you talk about, they go to Wake Forest coming off that bye. They go back home, play Syracuse and Stanford, and then go to SMU. Not as far, but that's much more navigable, that 4-game stretch. But yeah, not expecting a lot from these guys. I feel like Wilcox has been there long enough. You kind of know what you're going to get with Cal. And shockingly, the defense hasn't been very good. But yeah, 7-5. I don't see much more than 7-5.
Yeah, I mean, it can be in a transition season where you can have success. I think if you can get to a bowl game, that's considered a success. Over under 6.5, to me, that's a little high. That's just a little high, and you can kind of see where we sit that. And we'll have as the summer rolls along, we'll really dive into these over under totals later on. But Will, anything else on Cal?
Nothing on Cal. Are you ready? You ready to see some heads roll here? Because I think this is going to be.
ACC fans are smart, and so they know what the next letter or the next team in the alphabetical order is. And by the way, we just spent 10 minutes apiece, talking about Cal and Boston College. So let's move on to one of the big dogs of this conference.
There's some other teams that are less competitive. We won't spend as much time on.
Oh, please, God. No, I can't do it for my sanity. All right, let's talk Clemson here. New unnamed intern was doing some work for us along with us in a Google Doc today. Will, you got the first bullet point. So I talked about Cal. Let me know how you feel about Clemson, because I think we're both pretty high on what Clemson can be in 2024.
Yeah, I love this Clemson team. I like what Dabo did off the field. Obviously, he didn't bring anybody in the portal, which I'll get to, but he keeps Garrett Riley as offensive coordinator, keeps Cade Klubnik. They didn't lose many starting players to the portal.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got your quarterback, you got your OC back. You got to think there'll be improvement there. He brings in Matt Luke to coach the offensive line, a unit last year that was really, really bad. Matt Luke is a good enough offensive line coach that I think can turn that unit around immediately, and you'll see the success immediately. You'll probably even see it against Georgia, which they open with Georgia. That I don't wish that on anybody. But I mean, they're really good. But back to the portal real quick. Did you know, Bryce, that Clemson was tied for the most freshman All-Americans in the country last year?
I think so.
If you've got that many freshman All-Americans, you don't need to be hitting the portal if you can keep those guys. Clemson kept those guys. There's no need to go to the portal. I think all this portal talk and portal hate on Dabo is overblown. And, when you've got a strong foundation of a program like Dabo has, you don't necessarily need the portal. Although they have big question marks at wide receiver, it would have been nice if they could have gone and gotten a guy out of the portal at receiver to really help Klubnik, because that unit's got to improve big time. That was what was really holding them back, alongside subpar offensive line play, especially from their standards. So if those wide receivers can continue to improve, we'll see that offense do some good things. But that defense, man, they were really good last year. They gave up just 21 points per game. They've got linebacker Barrett Carter coming back, two defensive linemen, Peter Woods and TJ Parker, coming back. Both those guys as freshmen. Peter Woods had 26 tackles playing on that interior of the defensive line. TJ Parker added 33 tackles and 5.5 sacks. And that's as a true freshman. So you just got to expect those guys are going to get better. They're going to wreak havoc up front for them. And Barrett Carter does it all at linebacker, 62 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 5 pass breakups, and an INT last year as a linebacker. You think LSU would want him? You think they play him at defensive back? I've seen them do that with a linebacker before.
Yeah, linebacker's probably going to be taken in the first 32 picks next April. Yeah, I don't know. Thank God we're done with the SEC conversation.
Looking at Clemson's schedule, man, it's really easy. It's an easy conference schedule. They go to Florida State, and that's their toughest road game. They do have to go to Virginia Tech, and if Virginia Tech is rolling, that'll be a tough game for them, tough environment for them. But everybody else, they play at home. They get Louisville at home. They get NC State at home. This is a team that is a program that is looking primed to go back to the playoff, especially this expanded playoff. I think they're 1-2 at the top of this conference with Florida State. So they're going to lean on that defense. They bring Phil Maffa back at running back. We know Klubnik can run the ball some too. They're going to run the ball and play defense. And with that schedule, that's going to be enough. They'll probably be back in the ACC championship. I'm putting their ceiling at 11-1, and their floor at 8-4. They could drop those games like Louisville. They got a lot of question marks. They're bringing in basically a whole new team. They could very well go down to Florida State and lose. Could lose to Virginia Tech on the road if Virginia Tech's rolling. Georgia, I think Georgia's gonna beat them. But 11-1 to 8-4 is what I'm looking at. This is a really good team coming back to Clemson.
Well, Zach Jones agrees with you. He says ceiling 11-1, 8-4. And then a good point here, he says over on that over under at 9.5. He says, I have them losing to Georgia and FSU, but if they beat Georgia week 1, I'd be scared. I would too, because I think it's going to take a really good offensive effort to beat Georgia right there. And then a good comment here from True Seminole. This is definitely Will says he's not necessarily worried about the portal, and this is a good point. True Seminole says, I don't think it's too much overblown. The Alabama used the portal and got Jameson Williams and Gibbs, the two key players on the team that I think not using the portal is going to bite Clemson. It very well might. I will tell you this, though. When you look at the high school recruiting that Clemson has had as of late, they've got the number 6 class per 24/7 Sports right now for the 2025 grouping. They're really recruiting the state of Georgia very well, which we know is a talent-rich state. They've got some feelers elsewhere. If they keep hitting, and True Seminole, you're right, like it is a gamble because you're going to have to hit on a guy like TJ Parker and Peter Woods nearly every year to keep it up. That's a unique thing. But if you can, and you can find a way to do that, you're kind of I don't want to say playing with fire. You're playing with house money. I think if you're Clemson not using the portal, it's working. And people who say Clemson's on the downfall, oh yeah, and people who are saying that Clemson's in a downfall. I mean, guys, they were up there with the best team of the decade, for 3 straight years. It felt like so. Yeah, they're going to take a step back. I don't know.
Last year was the first year they didn't get 10 wins in 7-8 years, something crazy like that. They've won double-digit games for nearly a decade before last year.
Yeah, it was. Oh yeah, I mean it's been crazy. Jeremy York says, "Oh, well, Clemson every back on the level they were in the top 4 in the country for a solid handful of years." That's a fair question. To consistently be there, maybe that Jeremy is where the portal that True Seminole was talking about. About that. So
I've said it before. I think if Dabo continues to just ignore the portal and badmouth it, I don't think he gets back up to top 4 like that.
But to be where they are now, they can do this, how they're currently doing it, I think.
Right. And with an expanded playoff, 9 wins, if they win 9 and win the ACC 9-4 after that ACC title, they could be in the top 12. They could sneak in there.
Well, obviously, the ACC is going to get that automatic bid, but when you look at this schedule, I mean, look, you've got Georgia on there. If you lose it, it's non-conference. So really, it's not going to hurt you in terms of the ACC race.
And South Carolina at the end of the year. If you're talking about it, doesn't matter for conference.
It doesn't matter. No, you're right. If even 2, let's say they go 9-3, okay, in Jeremy's situation, even if you can get to a 2-loss ACC record, that still could put you in Charlotte at the end of the year for the ACC title game. And so, to Jeremy's point, he likes Clemson at 9 wins, solid. It could put you in the bracket, Jeremy, if you can get to 9-3 and you win that 10th game. There, you might have been talking about 9 wins overall. I don't know if 8-4 gets you there because I think that would require a couple losses in conference play, and maybe some things are kind of, I don't know. We'll see. Gavin says, "I wish we could see Tech lift Waite's pregame again. That was crazy." And True said, "Hey, I see both your sides."
Watching Tech personal. That's like a fever dream. Not even a Tech fan. That's like a fever dream.
We're going to talk about that head coach and now DC and Tech a little bit later. But yeah, that's Clemson. Just a couple more things, and I wanted to not harp on it too long. But what you said about this is a team that's still leaning on a borderline elite defense. I think that I don't know if they. I'll say this is my kind of hot take, and we'll do hot takes as we get through the summer. I think Clemson's going to have a top 5 defensive line unit overall in the country. I think that you talk about Peter Woods, T.J. Parker, and a couple other groups, and then a linebacker who I believe is playing either in his 5th or 6th year in Barrett Carter. These are guys that really good understanding of football. That front 7 might be one of the best front 7s in the country, all said and done. So I do like what Clemson brings to the table, and I kind of sit there with you. But I'm going 11-1, floor 8-4. I think they'll be somewhere in between that, like you said. So Clemson Tigers, and we're going to continue to move on. We're going to the Duke Blue Devils.
This is blank on what they were called.
I don't know, man. I was watching something about the Duke Blue Devils before I hopped on tonight's show, so I was just thinking about it. A good friend, Dr. Bob of the show, he is a massive fan of Duke. This is interesting because I think that Manny Diaz is a good coach. And I think that's a general consensus from people who aren't rock dwellers. So I sit here on this Tuesday night and I say, Will, like, I don't know if Duke is going to be able to maintain. I think there's going to be a little bit of a fall off. I don't know if it means that, I think it's going to be due to what they lost and how much they lost.
I agree.
So I like what Duke did in bringing Manny Diaz in. He was a good coach at Miami. If your barometer for how good a coach is just how many national championships he wins, well, then there's only one good coach every year. I mean, there are good coaches that do really well at where they are. So I like what Duke brings. They got that over-under win total of 6.5. The biggest question mark, though, is you lose Mike Elko, you lose Tyler Santucci, who's now the DC, obviously, over there at Georgia Tech. But you lose Riley Leonard, and it feels like there's just has to be natural progression. There's got to be a little bit of a drop-off, Will.
Yeah, no doubt. You also lose your leading rusher last year, Jordan Waters. But
Yeah.
to fill that Riley Leonard size hole at quarterback, they bring in Malik Murphy, really good athlete from Texas. Really a guy that I looked at as kind of a coup to come out of the portal for Duke. Kind of a guy you didn't really expect to hit the portal, but when you think about it, not really surprised with the quarterback room Texas has. But a lot of question marks around Murphy. Hadn't played a ton. So what's it going to look like? We know the offense they're going to run. Manny Diaz brings Jonathan Brewer over from SMU. There's history there. Jonathan Brewer was senior offensive quality control coach for Manny Diaz at Miami under offensive coordinator, now SMU head coach Rhett Lashley. They're going to come out and run the football. They're going to go up tempo. They're going to try to run it down your throat and just play smash mouth. And I think that fits well with Manny Diaz. You know that defense is going to be good. His defense was good at Miami every year. So you know the Duke defense will be good. They've got good playmakers on defense. They were able to keep their leading tackler, Trey Freeman, in there. So will be a big help having him back. That's about it I've got. He brings in Jonathan Patke for his defensive coordinator from Texas State. Texas State, shockingly, were second in the country in tackles for loss with 8.3 a game, ninth in sacks, a little over 3 a game. So some really good numbers. Patke also worked for Diaz at Miami. And coached linebackers there for them. But Duke could go a couple ways. I mean, if they hit on Malik Murphy, if they can find a running back, if Brewer can install an offense that works for them, and Manny Diaz and Patke can get that defense right, I think they could go 8-4. I think they've got a pretty easy schedule. That October 5th game that everybody's got scheduled is going to be one of their tougher games. They also have to go to Miami and to NC State. Those will be tough for them too. But I think their schedule's pretty easy. I think they could make things work. I'm going to put their floor at 6-6. There will be some drop off, I think, but if things go right, they could be 8-4.
Yet the back half of the schedule is what worries me when you look at, the first 5 games they have, or 6 games. We'll go those first 6 games. I feel confident that they can start off, 4-0. They've got Elon, Northwestern, UConn, and Middle Tennessee State. But then you host North Carolina. That feels like a pretty big litmus test, for what you're going to be able to accomplish. And what does this Manny Diaz team really look like? Like, what does the identity look like of what they want to do? And then they go on the road to Georgia Tech, which, last time they went there, that was an overtime game. Those two teams, I feel like it's always a back and forth battle with what they're kind of able to do. Those two games could determine. Oh, yeah. A ton of smart.
A lot of brain power.
A lot of brain power there. North Carolina, Georgia Tech might be the turning point of the season. If you can split those and you find yourself 5-1 heading into a stretch of hosting Florida State, hosting SMU, and then back-to-back road matchups against Miami and NC State, there's a path to getting to my ceiling, which is 8-4. If you can get there. Now, we're talking about this, and people might laugh. Ceiling, we're talking about everything hits. Like, we're talking about the loss of Riley Leonard. Maybe it's felt, but Malik Murphy shows that he is maybe that guy, and he can lead you and be a great quarterback for this. We're talking about a couple things that kind of have to hit. If those do, it's not out of the question, that they can win those first 5 games. And then I think they can beat Wake Forest. You're talking about that 6 wins. Can you pick off 2 of Georgia Tech, Florida State, SMU, Miami, NC State, and Virginia Tech? I think you can if we're talking about a scenario where
I think
they're really gelling.
Yeah, I think their schedule sets up good for that too. They got a bye week coming off Georgia Tech, going into Florida State. A lot can happen in a bye week in college. Your quarterback can figure something out, and if Murphy kind of just does enough to keep them competitive and win them a few games before that, he very well could take off in that bye week.
Yeah, and Dr. Bob
Comes at a
Plume's a
really
good
good time
point.
for them.
It does. Both of the bye weeks are a really good time for them. He says, don't count out Grayson Loftus in the battle with Malik Murphy. That's very true. I mean, Loftus is a guy that I think the staff is impressed with. And look, my name's not Bruce, but Jonesy thinks it is. Dr. Bob also says the infrastructure in Durham is significantly better than it was a decade ago. And he goes Dr.
I
Bob
don't.
Duke versus GT, the Dr. Bob Bowl. Would that
Yeah, Dr. Bob,
technically,
I don't think there's any doubt. The
how
infrastructure
does
is way better.
Dr. Bob, back to your question. How does Tulane figure into this, by the way? Because I know you're sweet on Tulane too. So hey, look, we appreciate it. True Seminole new fan, hit that like button. Make sure you share it with your friends. Okay, so I've got it at 8-4. Will for my
where I'm-
floor.
Mhm.
If quarterback is a black hole for you, it could get ugly. I'm gonna go 4-8. Like I think quarterback is such an important position that you think you have settled. If it's not, I'm going to go a down season and things go really bad. 4-8, I think is
Yeah.
a floor for Duke in 2024.
No, I could see it. I just have faith that Manny Diaz will have a strong defense. It'll keep him in games. And I mean, I feel like I'm an expert on the Gus Malzahn, Rhett Lashley offense. They're going to run the ball. That's going to be their MO. If they can't run the ball, nothing else will work. So they'll try to take care of the ball and run it. And if that works for them, even if it doesn't work for them, I think they can do enough to make a bowl game, which I feel like for Manny Diaz, you really got to do because you know your reputation as a head coach is not too great, and it's not all his fault. But he's going to have to find a way to have some success early on, especially now. Duke fans, they've had a little taste of success. They're going to want to keep it, and rightfully so.
And Dr. Bob mentioned this, I think it has shown that you can be a consistent winner at Duke, and Elko showed you that. And so, look, they didn't. You kind of look at the hire they made. They went to go get Manny Diaz, Will, because say, hey, we want a guy that we think can help even take us further. Like, I'm not saying he's a better coach than Mike Elko, but they feel like, hey, we're picking up steam. Let's don't just go hire necessarily a young guy that may take a couple years. Let's go get a guy that we think can help us win and keep on track. That's what they think can happen. I can see it, and we'll see obviously kind of what happens with Duke there. But that's the Duke Blue Devils, and we continue to keep rolling with it. Florida State, True Seminole is going to be very interested in this one because the biggest question, and it was going around on social media throughout spring football, Will, we can just kind of start here with this because I'm not buying into the stock that Florida State is depleted of all the talent. I do believe, and I will say this, they're not. I think that Mike Norvell is building something in Tallahassee that is going to be, we're going to look back at and say similar to the early Kirby Smart years, the early Nick Saban years, the Urban Meyer years at Ohio State, to where you're starting to build something where the average casual fan is not necessarily in tune with who that backup guy is, but he burst onto the scene because they've got some really good talent, the two deep. Now, look, I could be wrong. I think they're trending towards that in terms of depth, but it all comes down the shoulders of DJ Uiagalelei. Can that young man throw a pass accurately?
There's no doubt. I mean, you look at who they brought in from the portal. They made some huge additions. Mike Norvell went in there and just ransacked Alabama in the middle of the night when Alabama was confused for a week or two.
Days. He goes, yeah.
John Murphy, Roydell Williams, Earl Little, TJ Ferguson, and Malik Benson. All those guys come from Alabama. They play on both sides of the ball. Marvin Jones joins from Georgia, which crazy storyline with that one.
The last time they brought an edge rusher from Georgia, he was a first-round pick in Jermaine Johnson. So it worked out last time for him. So we'll see what happens.
They go get a guy that you know a lot more about than me, Jaylen Brown from LSU. What was he, a 4-star coming out of high school?
4-star Florida native, really good player.
Mm-hmm. And they go get the defensive tackle from Oregon State, Sione Lolohea. Maybe I got that right. I don't know. True
well done.
Let me know. But FSU, man, they just reloaded. I mean, Norvell, he obviously came into the offseason with chip on his shoulder, and I've had a lot of bad things to say about him. I did not like how his reaction as the leader of his program to missing out on the playoff. He was rightfully upset, but I think he kind of hung on it a little long, and then it showed in the bowl game, which concerned me. But the way he went out and aggressively attacked the transfer portal, I love it. And their schedule, it's not hard. It's not hard. Going to Dublin
No, it's not.
might be the hardest thing they have to do all year. I'm putting their ceiling right up there at 12-0 and a floor of 9-3. Like if DJU can't throw the ball, they'll still be talented enough to kind of just manhandle this schedule. They get Clemson at home, which is big for them. And that's really kind of the only question marks I have on the schedule. Things would have to, I think, really go wrong. They catch somebody at a bad time or somebody just goes off. Well, they do go to Notre Dame, who people are very high on. I don't really understand why. That'll be a little difficult for them. But, you know, I see no scenario where they're any worse than 9-3. But, you know, I think that they might just steamroll through this schedule that they've got.
Well, the big question is DJU. I mean, look, how much stock am I really putting into a spring game where he didn't look comfortable? How much stock am I really putting into some throws, you know, that are circulating in videos around practice where he's not hitting his mark? I think it could be a concern because I think Jordan Travis was that good of a quarterback where I think there could be a little drop off. But are we going to see Oregon State DJU or are we going to see Clemson DJU? If you can get closer to what happened out there in Corvallis last year, then you're really starting to kind of get into everything else is falling into place. So I do agree with a couple comments here, and we'll get to them. Jonesy says QB is a big question mark. That's fair. But let's get to a couple more here because David says, wonder who he's a fan of. They're losing week 0. Write that down. I like it. True Seminole says, I do agree that consistency in the portal and year after year better recruiting classes, definitely building something special. Zach Jones says, over, I see a ceiling of 12-0, floor of 8-4, 9-3. I would bet on 10 or 11 wins. Cougar Intruder, appreciate you tuning in. Florida State fan, it looks like over there. Norvell says it's the most talented team he's ever had in terms of depth, 9-3 to 12-0, all on the table. And then True says 10-2. So you've got this. What was your ceiling? Just say it real quick.
12-0. 12-0.
I'm going 11-1 only because I think going undefeated is really hard. I do agree with you, though. If things go right for them, they could have a really, really another fun season there in Tallahassee. Because you look at the schedule, you got to go to Dublin, but Will, you don't play until Monday night of the next week. That is a massive thing to get that extra day. That's huge. Then you get the bye week right after it. You host Memphis, you host Cal. Like if you're a team, and we'll talk about this when we get to Georgia Tech, Florida State got they got buttered up, we'll say, when they got this schedule. Because if you got to go to Dublin to play your game literally 11 or 9 days later and then get a bye week and then not leave the state of Florida until the late September, that's how you want it if you play the first game in Ireland. So, yes, Clemson's going to be a massive matchup. Miami, look, we're going to talk about them. They got a lot of talent, but I don't know. I mean, well, they got to cash in on it. And then Notre Dame at number 5 preseason early ranking. That's kind of wild to me, but
wild.
It's, and then Florida, they may have an interim coach by then. So all those things considered, I'm going 11-1 and 9-3. I think this is a pretty slim margin. I think this team's going to have success. They're going to challenge for a spot in Charlotte. And man, the Noles, I'm excited because I like Mike Norvell, and this is going to be a big telling year in his tenure and legacy at Florida State. Was it just a group of players that you were able to hit on one time, or is this more of a culture you're building in a place that's going to be a destination through the portal and high school ranks? So Florida State, a good one right there.
A lot of talent. A lot of talent there.
Before we move on to the next one, we're 45 minutes into this. We have like 13 other teams to get to. This is going to be a long one. Pile in, we're gonna get to all this, but make sure you like that video and subscribe to the channel as well. So, Will, we keep rolling.
Here we go. This is what everybody came to see.
This is what a lot of the viewership, for the people who are not new here, I used to cover Georgia Tech full time, and now I do a Georgia Tech show. So a lot of our fan base is Georgia Tech, but we talk ACC and SEC football as well. So now we talk Georgia Tech. Well, this is first off a team that
You want me to start here? You want me to start? Or you want me
I
to save
mean,
it to the end?
I'll go first. You went first, Florida State. I'll go first. Well, okay. I'm going to read what Will put as a joke. Here, I'll read what you put as a joke. In the first bullet point, he goes, the floor for Georgia Tech is 0-12. Haynes King triples his interception total from 2023. Brent Key is fired midseason, and J-Bat replaces him with another one of Mark Teixeira's best friends because Tex has this football program held hostage. It's a joke. It's a joke.
I'll tell you what, though, there'll be a lot of people that agree with that last part right there.
That's not wrong. And Will knows all too well what that feels like as an Auburn fan.
Yes, I do.
Okay. I'm going to do a separate show really diving into what Georgia Tech brings to the table, but I'm just going to walk through this. I have mentioned this all spring. I think having Haynes King coming back, yes, I think having Haynes King as your quarterback is a plus. This offense was one of the best in terms of year-to-year production, in terms of turnaround from 2022 to 2023, one of the best in the country. Buster Faulkner is a rising star, I think, and poised to get a head coaching job in the near future. You have pieces. You have Jamal Haynes, an 1,000-yard rusher. You have one of the best freshman receivers in the country last year in Eric Singleton. What you don't have, Will, though, is you have a defense that was literally one of the worst in the FBS, one of the worst, if not the worst in certain statistical categories in the ACC. You cannot be a program and have consistent success and have a top 15 offense and a bottom 15, bottom 20 defense. Now, they made additions. We mentioned with Duke earlier. They brought in Tyler Santucci from the school of Mike Elko, a guy who also served on Brian Kelly's staff at Notre Dame. He's been around guys who understand how to win. They've got to take care of the ball. That's going to be the biggest thing. But, Will, they've got to find a way to play competent defense. I have concerns about the defensive line. Linebacker play has to be better. The secondary has to be better. They've got to stay healthy. But when you look at this, the ceiling, okay? The ceiling, and I'm going to walk through the schedule and I'll hand it over to you because this is not TV. We can keep going as long as we want. We put in enough research on the show that we get to go full 2 hours if we need to. Right. Well, not you, but you got to drive. But I will sit with this.
This is what it is.
You go to Dublin. I saw a comment, earlier. If you're going to beat Florida State, there's not a better time to beat them. Everything's new.
No
I
doubt.
think if you're playing Florida State in October or November, I think it was Dr. Bob that put that out there. But if you're playing Florida State in October, November, there's a massive problem in terms of how you match up.
Yep.
The
Dr.
fact
Bob.
that you get them. Yeah, Dr. Bob says right there, Tech is getting FSU during the only game we could possibly win against them, replacing a QB in week 1, and a roster is learning how to gel gives Tech a puncher's chance. Yeah, week 0. There you go.
Week 0.
I'm going to say this, and folks that are not even in the live show are going to troll, but this is something that's I mean wholeheartedly. That game against Georgia State is the definition of a trap game. Does that mean you will lose? No. Does Will saying that Dell McGee can turn Georgia State into a G5 power mean that you're going to lose? No. What it does mean, though, is that you have a team of a lot of kids who may feel slighted, a lot of kids, including a starting quarterback and a cornerback, that may feel slighted, that's on that Georgia State team. They want nothing better than to beat you in your home stadium. And also, this is a game for recruiting-wise. If you can go beat them, there's going to be recruits that Tech invites that Georgia State's going to be in on as well. So that is the definition of a trap
Remind
game.
them who Georgia State's quarterback is going to be this year. Remind them who Georgia State's quarterback is.
Zach Gibson's there. He's ready to roll, baby. And Zach Gibson withstanding, he's a baller. And I like what he brings to the table. All right, so Florida State, Georgia State. When you look at the schedule, like they should beat Georgia State. They should beat VMI. They should beat who else? That's the question mark because Georgia Tech is such a hot and cold team. Mm-hmm. I think they can beat Duke. I think that they can beat NC State potentially. And I'll kind of roll through mine and I'll give it to you here. I think that they end up probably, as of right now, I think they lose Florida State. They go 0-1, 1-1 Georgia State, 2-1. They beat Syracuse. They beat VMI. I got a loss at Louisville that puts them 3-2. You're going to have to split Duke and North Carolina. The upset win that they get every single year, I've got it Notre Dame. Inside the bins, it's going to be fun. Notre Dame, I think, is a little
That's right.
overrated.
That's in the bins.
It's in the bins. It's going to be fun. Maybe you're going to be there, Will. Maybe you might be
Could
there. Who
be.
knows?
Might be.
Could be. And then you kind of go through it, Virginia Tech, Miami, NC State. That being said, there is a path. If this defense, if Tyler Santucci can work some magic, I think the coaching's better. I'm not sure the personnel is, but if you can get it up to par, if the offense, stays humming and maybe even gets a little more consistent, Haynes King touchdowns, interception numbers, I'm right here with you with what you're saying. I've got 9-3 as your best case scenario for Georgia Tech. Worst case, I will go a little higher. I'm going 5-7 for my worst case scenario, where things fall apart. Haynes King still is that high risk, high reward player that he was in 2023. We're going to learn really quickly. Is that just who he is? Or can he cut down on those things and still be as explosive as he was? And don't forget about that yards per carry that he had there in 2023. No, I'm just kidding with our friend TD Jake over in the Discord. But Will, I hand it off to you. Here we go.
Yeah, I'm with you. Ceiling 9-3, floor of 4-8. You look at Georgia Tech, like you said, they win a game that they shouldn't every single year. I think there's 2 games that they can roll out of bed and win if they slept on the right side of the bed, that is, in Georgia State and VMI, just like you. But they could find at least 2 more wins, I think, pretty easily.
Yeah.
You brought up yards per carry. They go to Virginia Tech. I think that's a game they could get.
Yeah.
Duke could be a game they get. I mean, but if things go right, man, and it's really not that difficult for them. Haynes King, cut down on the interceptions. Defense, I hope you learned how to tackle this offseason. That's kind of it. And they'll be a lot better. But, it's really important for them to get back to a bowl game and win another one. Brent Key's got to build on a bowl winning season. I mean, things were so bad, and I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know. It was so bad. And in 2 years to have won a bowl game, I think that's a huge accomplishment, but he's got to build on it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. He's got to build on that. You've got to find success. Georgia Tech can be a team that challenges to go to Charlotte. Like they can be that. This offense has legitimate firepower at its disposal.
That offense is good enough. The offense is
really
enough.
Yeah. And look, you get some of the bigger games like Miami. That's a swing game, but you get them in Atlanta. This is another underlying factor. Bobby Dodd is going to become a tough place to play again, and that's going to be another thing. And I don't want to go too much into it because that's going to be an individual show I'm going to do. But if they can protect Bobby Dodd, you're talking about 3 potential swing games: Duke, Miami, and NC State. Like those are potentially, top 30 teams right there, top 40 teams that you could knock off inside your own building. So I will say here, Tech can be an ACC dark horse. They can be. I know Maxwell put it there, but
are they your dark horse pick though? That is the question. Are they your dark horse pick?
I don't think they are. I think it's a lot to. My biggest concern is I just think it's a lot to ask for this defense to go from being one of the worst in the country to top 40, top 30 without the personnel. And a lot of people who want to point to Santucci, that guy had a really good defensive line at Duke, and I don't know if they have all the pieces to the puzzle quite yet. So, hey, True Seminole giving a little love.
Speaking of dark horses,
that was Georgia Tech. All right, we're going. Go ahead.
We did pretty good last year on our dark horse pick. It was these guys, the Louisville Cardinals. Had a really easy schedule last year. They don't have it so easy this year.
I remember sitting here around this time last year, Will. And I remember people telling me, Jack Plummer who? And yeah, Jack Plummer's not going to go win the, Maxwell Award. But he won them some football games. And we sat here and said that Jeff Brom is one of the better underrated coaches in college football, one of the better coaches in the ACC. That being said, they do not have the luxury of that schedule. Over under win total 8.5. An unreal portal class.
Best in the ACC.
What do you think? I mean, when you look at this schedule, it's tougher than it was last year. What do you think?
It's a lot tougher. I mean, for one, they go to Notre Dame. They go to Boston College, which October 26th, that's around the time for Red Bandana game. Do they pick Louisville for the Red Bandana game? They go to Clemson. They got to go across the country. Granted, they have a bye week before, so they'll probably give students a week off from class if they even go to class there. To play Stanford, they got to go out there. and they play at Kentucky. So it's much more difficult. Their non-conference is a joke. Austin P, although they do play Jack State, who was really good last year at Sun Belt
The,
level.
the stats tell you Jack State was even better than people might have thought they were.
Yeah.
You were reading
What did I see today? I think they had a top 25 total
30.
defense.
Yeah, it was like crazy.
Something nuts. But the schedule's a lot tougher. They obviously have Georgia Tech, SMU as well, Miami, and Pitt. A lot of winnable games. I mean, I think this is a gettable schedule, but I don't know that they're going to be as good. Like we said, and coaching really is the theme of this conference. If there's some really, really good coaches in this conference, and Jeff Brom, I think he's right up there in the top 3. They're going to be hanging around. They are going to be a tough out. There's no doubt about it. Their portal class is insane. I mean, the headline, they bring in Ja'Cory Brooks, Colin Lacey to help fill out that wide receiver room. Bring in Tamarian McDonald from Tennessee. Some big names coming in there, but they've got to replace Jack Plummer. That's the big question mark. But I got a lot of faith in Jeff Brom. I think he's a great coach. I know I'm going to catch flack for this, but I'm pegging their ceiling at 10-2. I see a path to 10 wins here. I do. They've got tough road games. Can they navigate that BC game? Clemson will be tough going there. Notre Dame, especially early in the year with all the hype that Notre Dame has, if they don't drop a game early, that's going to be so tough for them. But there's a path. But if they drop all those, they probably will drop another one, I think. So I'm putting their floor at 8-4. I just have a lot of trust in Jeff Brom. He brought in a lot of talent to replace a lot that was going out. I got a lot of faith in Jeff Brom.
Ja'Cory Brooks and Colin Lacey. I mean, you get one of the top receivers in the Sun Belt. You bring him up. Ja'Cory Brooks, a fantastic talent that, is trying to find his stride and is going to head to Louisville. I think I know what you're laughing at. But Tyler Shaw, being kind of the starting quarterback that they're going to be bringing in.
I don't think so. We know who that guy is. He's transferred.
Yeah,
we know who he is.
I think they hit on Jack Plummer. I think they hit on Jack Plummer, and a part of that helped was because Plummer was originally at Purdue with Jeff Brum, and that helped a lot. Goes to Cal, and then obviously comes to Louisville for his final year. So I look at this schedule, and as I roll through it, you have 10-2. I'm going to go a ceiling of 9-3. I think that the lack of a consistent quarterback potential is going to hurt them there, and that's kind of been a common theme, and it is for college football. Like, consistency at the quarterback position. But I think Jeff Brom is one of the best coaches in the ACC. I think he's going to hang around. They're going to steal a couple games. They're going to be a hard team to beat. I think defensively they can be pretty solid this year. So I'm going 9-3, and then I'm going floor. I'm going to go 7-5. So kind of where you said, I think you had that 2-win, plus or minus 2-win spread there. I'm going same thing, but just 9-3, 7-5 there for Louisville.
So real quick on their quarterbacks behind Tyler Show. Is that how you say his name?
I think it's Shaw, but I might be wrong.
They've got redshirt sophomore Brady Allen and redshirt freshman Pierce Clarkson behind him. Couldn't tell you anything about those guys, so they might have brought in Tyler Show to be the starting quarterback. But I tell you what, Jeff Brom, he found a way to win games with Jack Plummer, who, as we saw, athletically really limited, but found a way to have success.
Jeff Brom won games at Purdue, people. Like, he won games at Purdue. If you can win at Purdue and get to bowl games, you can coach. It is right there. And Dr. Bob does say, he goes, always greasy. The Texas A&M, the ACC, they have really, really opened up their NIL pocket, by the way.
Hey, it's that Papa John's money. Greasy pizza, you're going to be a greasy person.
Good crust, though. Underrated crust there from Papa John's. Very. Teresa Mendel says another program with a bright future, and Gavin, as always, says who. And then our good friend TriStar. I think that Maryland and South Carolina might be competitive in the ACC this year, and then Louisville will be competitive in the Big Ten. He refuses to recognize. I think TriStar lives in an era where he's still playing NCAA 06. And you know what, TriStar? I appreciate you for that because I like that too.
NCAA 06.
Great
My
game.
favorite of the series, by the way.
That was the one where you kind of got to go to college and take Mascots 101. It was amazing for Road to Glory.
That was a few years later, but yeah. Okay. Great addition to Road to Glory.
Good stuff.
Well, that's Louisville.
Let's move to Miami. The Canes. Okay, well, let's just get this out of the way. Every single year, we sit here and talk about this is the year. This is the year. Miami, they do all this. They do this. And every single year, that's just some boneheaded thing. Last year, it's does he know how to kneel? I will go ahead and say this team has – you ready for this? Clip this, everybody. This team has the talent on paper to win the ACC and be a top seed, one of the top seeds in the playoff. Like, I believe that on paper. The ability to perform with what is on paper, Will, though, just seemingly just so far away for them. And so I don't know.
Well, yeah, Dr. Bob already said it a few minutes ago. Let's see. Here it is. Cristobal coaches down to opponents. I was at the Civil War game in 2019 because Dr. Bob has evidently been at every college football game ever. When he had Herbert as a senior and Panay Sewell at left tackle, and that game was in doubt until Tristan Gebbia threw a pick. Also, same year, they opened up with Auburn. Auburn had a true freshman quarterback, Bo Nix. In the second half, I don't think they let Herbert throw the ball down the field one time. That's who Cristobal is. We know who Cristobal is, right? So yeah. We're expecting them to lose games that they should win.
But here's the thing, Will. The talent acquisition at some point has to pay off, right? Like at some point it has to click.
It was good this year. Look at their portal class, second in the ACC, right behind Louisville. And I would argue that they had a better portal class. Louisville's is ranked higher because they brought in 30 guys. Miami didn't bring that much, but I think their quality is better. They bring in Cam Ward to play quarterback. Instant upgrade there. Damian Martinez, a running back from Oregon State. Sam Brown, Houston wide receiver. Marley Cook, defensive line from Middle Tennessee State. And Michelle Powell, another guy from Washington State. 24/7 all notes those guys as 4 stars, 4-star transfers.
Yeah, I'm looking, kind of through some of these names, Will, and I mean, obviously we have to start. He's the thumbnail, Cam Ward. I mean, is this going to be another De'Aaron King situation? Where you bring in a guy who's super, talented at the G5 level. But I'm going to tell you one thing, like maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid.
From Washington
State. I think, yeah. I'm thinking Cam Ward hits here. Like I'm thinking Cam Ward hits. They have a quarterback who is consistent and dynamic and a problem. I think Cam Ward. Let's go ahead and book it. I want people to clip this. So in October, I think Cam Ward's going to be on a midseason Heisman list. Let's just roll with it. That's going to be one of my crazy, out of their projections. They've got talent. I think it's going to hit. Offensive line, though, which is what Cristobal is supposed to be his bread and butter, could be one of the weaker spots. And I know that's something you were looking at.
Yeah, it's a big question mark, but Cristobal's an offensive line coach. I think he can coach him up and improve that. Ruben Bain, dog. Was it a beast, a freshman All-American, going to be a first-round pick. They bring back linebacker Francisco Mauigoa.
He's good.
No clue how to say that name. He comes back for his senior year. Those two guys coming off the edge, they combined for 15 sacks last year. So they've got the pass rushers. They've got skill players coming back, leading receiver Xavier Restrepo and Jacoby George come back. So the talent's there. They were just missing the quarterback. And Cam Ward's a guy, if your offensive line protection breaks down, he can get out of the pocket. We saw him do it at Washington State. Keep the play alive. I like this team. I think the talent's there, but we know they're going to drop a game. I'm going to put their ceiling at 11-1 and their floor right there at 9-3. TriStar says it there. Miami has a favorable schedule. I agree. And they can just roll out of bed and and win most of these games.
Yeah, you look at, up until that first bye week on October the 12th, I mean, Florida A&M, Ball State, USF, Virginia Tech, Cal. I think this might be crazy to think. I mean, if you can win the Florida game, I think you can beat Virginia Tech. You could legitimately start off 6-0. And then you kind of get into the meat of your schedule where you have a bye week on either side of it, but can you take 2 out of 4 from that, 3 out of 4 from that? If you can take 3 out of 4 from there, I think you're playing in Charlotte if you're Miami. Like if you can do that. Yeah. So I've got the ceiling for Miami. We've talked a lot about them here. I'm going the ceiling. I think if yours holds true with what you're sticking on your notes here, I'm going just below that because I do think this is a team that could win 11 games. But I think due to, unless we see a drastic change from an in-game coaching, standpoint, I'm going to sit with 10-2 being the ceiling, and I'm going to go 8-4 as the floor. I'm going to maintain that, plus minus 2, because I think this is a team that has too much talent to lose more than four games. But who knows? Who knows? I'm going to be honest with you. I want Miami to win.
I think it's a make or break year for Mario. And yeah, when Miami's at the top, college football is better for it. I don't think anybody would argue that. But it's a make or break year for Mario. He's got too good of a team to not finish below third in the ACC. I think he may get a reprieve if they finish third because, like you said, that 4-game stretch, tricky. At Louisville, FSU, Duke, at Georgia Tech, tricky 4-game stretch.
Yeah, it's tricky, and it's going to be interesting to see kind of how they roll with that. But Miami is a team; it's a lot of boomer bust potential there. All right, Will, we are getting awfully close to that 10 p.m. Eastern time slot, which I don't want to go past. So let's keep rolling here. We'll go a little quicker. North Carolina.
Yep.
This is obviously a fun one in terms of our portion of our fan base here on the show.
This should get its own video.
Hey, it will. You can check all of these archived each individually over there on the channel too if you just want to watch your favorite team. A couple things stand up to me about North Carolina. Schedule that you can navigate. It's there for them. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah, it's Max Johnson isn't Sam Howell and he isn't Drake May, but Max Johnson is going to be good enough to be at least a league average ACC quarterback. He's going to be able to do that for you. So I really do think here, and I'm going to say this, live on stream right now. Gene Chizik was unable to get the job done, and I know Jeff Collins, for a lot of people, his star has lost its brightness at other places, including a program within the ACC. I still think this guy's a really good defensive coordinator, and I think he's a really good guy when it comes to that. And so I think their defense is going to be better. I think Max Johnson can come in and provide you some stability in a transition year at that position to where you can grow young players. You can continue to find who you want at the position. And then, they're going to have to replace a lot though. Tez Walker's obviously gone. You have Nate McCollum, J.J. Jones, and it's just going to be interesting. I mean, I think that they can be solid, and I'm not going to go too much into it. I've just got my ceiling though. I'm going ceiling 9-3, and I'm going to go floor of 7-5. Which I know I think that this over/under win total of 7.5 is kind of funny, but that's I don't know. That's where we're going. That's where I'm sitting with it.
I'm similar. I think there's a lot of boomer bust potential here. They bring back a lot of contributors on both sides of the ball. Pretty good portal class. Bring in their quarterback. Bring in his brother Jake Johnson to help that tight end room out. But it's boomer bust because I think the schedule is pretty easy. So I'm putting their ceiling at 10-2, their floor at 7-5. They don't necessarily have a tricky stretch. Yeah, they go to Duke, Pitt at home, host Georgia Tech, who owns them historically, which is wild to think about. That's tricky. Back-to-back road games. Virginia and Florida State will be tough for them, but I see a lot of wins here. I mean, they should start 4-0.
Yeah. Yeah.
How quickly can Jeff Collins turn this defense around, and can Mac Brown keep that locker room? I think those are the biggest questions.
And the question has to be asked too, like, is Mac Brown run out of gas? And I know we got a couple people saying that. I mean, Dr. Bob is saying that about Mac Brown. Have they run out of gas with with this engine in North Carolina? Fair question. I think this team makes a bowl game. I will say this. I mean, we've got it at 10-2, 9-3. I don't see this as one of the teams, even though that win total's up there. I don't see them in the ACC title game.
No, I don't either. But, stranger things happen. Max Johnson, really, really good quarterback. Really like what he brings. But it's going to be different. And really their big question is on defense. How quickly can Jeff Collins turn them around?
Yeah. North Carolina, the Tar Heels. All right, we're going to continue to move on here a little bit quicker. NC State. This is another very, very not a friend of the program. Declined the invitation to come on the show, but I do think that Dave Doran is a really, really good football coach. They get the aforementioned Jordan Waters to transfer in. They get Grayson McCall, and they have their leading receiver, Kevin Concepcion. Sounds like a right-handed submarine reliever that you'd be seeing Kevin Concepcion there. It's all going to come down to defense, and can Grayson McCall make the transition?
Yeah. Grayson McCall, Jordan Waters, big pickups in the transfer portal. looks like they're going to do things maybe a little bit differently offensively. Brennan Armstrong ran a ton last year. I think he ended up as their leading rusher at quarterback. Talk about those yards per carry. Defense, I think, will be a huge question mark. Doran's a defensive guy. I think he'll have them in position to succeed. They don't return much, but some big names coming from the portal. Some notable ones: Jihad Carter, safety from Ohio State; Chaz Wallace, D-line from Colorado; and Donovan Kaufman coming in play safety from Auburn. I just really like Dave Doran. Kind of the same way I feel about Louisville. I love Dave Doran. Have a lot of trust in him.
Mm-hmm.
And their schedule, again, not difficult. I see a path to 10 wins here. So I'm going to put their ceiling at 10-2 and their floor at 8-4. But like North Carolina, they'll probably be closer to the floor than they will the ceiling. I know it's just a 2-game swing, but they're far more likely to finish at their floor than their ceiling for me.
Yeah, and I think when you look at what they can bring to the table, I mean, there are expectations in Raleigh. And we were talking about this, like NC State's one of the better jobs in the country, right? Because the expectations are not necessarily let's make the playoff. It's, hey, let's sit comfortably above bowl eligibility each year. It's a lot. I will liken the NC State job to the Kentucky football job. Gavin, our intern, we're not supposed to say unnamed intern, but yeah, he's there. He said that.
Hey, and remember a few years ago, they kind of moved heaven and earth to keep Dave Doran from going to Tennessee. So they love him there, and he's done great things. I think that just tells you what the program is. He's raised the floor. I mean, Vegas, to have them at 8.5 for their over-under shows that they've how much he's raised their floor.
You know, you talk about raising the floor. I mean, I wanted to kind of touch on this about Grayson McCall. I think Grayson McCall brings you a blend of athleticism. He's a pretty efficient passer too. And, you know, to Dr. Bob's point here, he goes, Waters transferring, you pairing him with a legitimate, you know, first, second, third team running back that, you know, you're bringing over from Duke. I think it's going to open up this offense a little more than what they had. It was a disappointing year at the quarterback position. I think last year you had Brennan Armstrong, you had MJ Morris. You move on those two guys. I'm excited for the challenge that Grayson McCall has taken upon because he's been one of the better quarterbacks at the Group of 5 level. Now it's an opportunity for him to come in and say, hey, I want to prove myself in a higher conference. And look, I mean, NC State, for me, that's the reason why they're a dark horse contender to get to Charlotte. So
yeah,
we'll kind of see
me too.
What happens.
True Seminole. Love this. Agree 100%. Circling the Tennessee game for them. Going to tell us a lot about this team. I agree because Tennessee's going to be pretty dang good. So they play them in the Duke's Mayo Classic. Always a fun game.
What a sponsor.
2 weeks later, they travel to Clemson. And then their next toughest game, man, is that November 23rd matchup at Georgia Tech. They do play Duke before then, but that's at home. They travel to the Flats November 23rd to play Georgia Tech and then go to North Carolina. There's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of potential. How does Grayson McCall handle the step up to the ACC, a step up in competition? We'll really have to see. Have to see what Grayson McCall brings.
Two things I want to hit on here. You know, they have that matchup against Tennessee, but they get the matchup against Western Carolina, which a lot of people are going to think, okay, it doesn't really matter. That to have a tune-up game before that is going to be huge for McCall to establish confidence. You're not going to be able to take a lot of things away, essentially from a schematic standpoint, but just building the rapport in a game-like atmosphere with game speed is going to be massive. And then Dr. Bob says this. He goes, I think Doran is a solid but not spectacular coach. He can beat Carolina and get an upset over FSU or Clemson or Raleigh, but not the guy to get them to 10 wins consistently. I would say this, and he goes, they always lay an egg under Doran. There might be some frustration they haven't gotten to 10 wins consistently, but like, is the onus on NC State to be a 10-win like team every single year? I don't know. Like, I think if you're sitting between 8 and 9 wins down year 7, like you're going to be able to keep a job in Raleigh for a long time, like Dave Doran has.
Yeah, I like Dave Doran a lot. I think he fits well there. He's done a lot of good things there. Like I said, he's really raised the floor.
Yeah, agreed. NC State continuing to move on throughout the SEC. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. We're going now
this might be the shortest one we talk about.
This honest to God might just be something where we just this is not getting its own video, by the way. I think I'll just say this. I think that they are look, they lost 2 players in Solomon DeShields and Dayon Hayes in the post spring portal. Pat Narduzzi has been good at player development. I don't love the talent that they have there, and so yeah, I'm not really excited to watch any Pitt football this year. I think that's the best way to put it.
You
And
don't have to
I don't
worry
even know if I
about
will.
that. I think most of their games will be on the CW. Do you even get that channel? Who knows?
I don't, and I'm glad. I'm glad. Will literally has them labeled. We have 4 programs labeled under our bottom dwellers with no notes. Will, I'm going to go with this is a team that literally went. Well, they went 2-10 last year, right?
I think, yeah, 2-10.
I'm going to set the floor there again at 2-10. I'm going to go ceiling 5-7. I don't even know if they
Yep.
make a bowl game. Like I
I'm
don't
with
know
you
if
the
they
same
make a
way.
bowl game.
But
But give that third bullet point you got there.
Yeah, the biggest thing, you look at this schedule, man.
It's brutal.
I think the biggest question mark is how long do you keep Pat Narduzzi? When will Pat Narduzzi get the axe? I'm going to go ahead and make the prediction. It'll be after that Cal game. They start 2-4. They're going to pull the plug. You got a bye week before you play Syracuse. That makes a lot of sense. You do it before a bye week. They pull the plug there. Pat Narduzzi had one really good year, couldn't build on it, and been a lot of complaining coming out of Pitt from him of late. So, I think I can say that he's not a friend of the show. So
he's not a friend of the show. They get the new OC, Cade Bell, who I know from his time at Valdosta State. His father, Kerwin Bell, longtime quarterback for the Florida Gators. All this different kind of stuff. Yeah. So they're going to try to bring in a new offense. You and I look at the schedule, and I said, okay, they're going to beat Kent State, Youngstown State, find more wins. Like, I don't know if they're going to beat Cincinnati. I don't think they're going to beat West Virginia. And then you go through the schedule, like, you're going to have to count on one of these other 8 Like, I think they could
Cal.
go the ACC.
Maybe Cal. I mean,
Cal can run the ball. Like, what does Pitt have?
Virginia?
That's a genuine question.
Could
and I'm asking
Virginia.
If a Pitt fan comes across this video, please tell me what you have, because there's not a lot of information out there, and we don't really know what you have.
They might not watch them after. They might not watch a Pitt Panthers game after Cincinnati. They'll be locked in on the Steelers though, watching Justin Fields return kicks. Yeah, Pitt. Yeah, best case scenario, they might find 5 wins. I mean, I just rely on Vegas here to give me a ceiling, because they're bad. They are not good.
I think under. And True Seminoles will be looking forward to the Pitt coaching search. What's the market for that?
Let's move to some big fans of the show right here. I'm excited to talk about this group. SMU.
All right, so I want to preface this. Obviously, if you haven't checked it out already, if you're an SMU fan watching this, head back into the channel in our Inside the Booth series we do. I sat down with director of football operations over there, and it was a great conversation just about how SMU is preparing, and a kind of cool story where they figured out literally the Friday before week 1 that they were going to be invited to the ACC. So it changed a lot of the things for their season. So let's go SMU. Now I will say this. SMU is a dark horse contender for me. They have lost a lot in the spring portal kind of post-January cycle. That being said, I like that they have Preston Stone. I think that they could really make a nice impact in what they could do in 2024 in the new conference. I think they're the team that is best poised to make a splash out of the new ACC members. I've got the ceiling here, Will. When you look at this schedule and what they bring to the table, I genuinely think it's not a hard schedule to manage. You could find a way if things hit, and if Rhett Lash's offense takes off, you could win 10 football games. And people laughing, go look at the schedule and tell me where you're not. Let's just walk through it. Nevada, honest to God, we're never going to talk about the Mountain West Conference. HCU, I think they might play Barry this year. BYU, okay. BYU, typically a solid team. TCU, maybe. I've got them losing to Florida State and Louisville, but Stanford's borderline Ivy League at this point.
Stanford is bad.
Duke's going to be a fun matchup. Pitt, okay. We've already talked about that. Boston College, at Virginia, and Cal. This is another team that's in that 4 to 9 range where they could find themselves with a chance to get to Charlotte late in the year.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Already said it. Love Rhett Lashley. Did a lot of good things at Auburn, so I'm always gonna have a soft spot for Rhett Lashley. Um, I'm with you. Ceiling of 10-2, floor gonna be down at 7-5. There's a lot of question marks. How are they going to adjust moving up to the ACC? How's that going to look like? And we kind of know what they are. They're not going to play a ton of defense. So how will that affect them in games? Preston Stone coming back is huge. Threw for over 3,000 yards last year, 28 touchdowns, 6 picks. I love these 3 offensive linemen they brought in from the portal. Some massive dudes. Paris Patterson from Arkansas, 6'6", 352 pounds. Andrew Shamley, also from Arkansas, 6'6", 304 pounds. And Quayshawn Sharp from East Carolina, 6'4", 318 pounds. You're bringing in dudes that big. You know what you are as a team. You know what you want to do as a team. You want to come out and hit somebody in the mouth and run the football, and that's what SMU is going to do. They got a quarterback that can sling it around, but it starts in the running game. They bring in those 3 guys to try to push around some ACC defensive linemen. If they can do that, man, they could just run their way to Charlotte. They won't have to do it much through the air. A lot of upside, and it's an easy schedule.
True Seminole says this, and this is a part of it. Like, they skip NC State, Clemson, and Miami. Like,
who else did that last year?
Louisville.
Did they miss all 3 of those? But Louisville, I don't know if it was those 3 specifically, but they missed the 3 best teams in the ACC in the regular season, and they took it all the way to Charlotte. I think SMU can do the same thing.
Look, and I don't want to get into it. SMU has money, and they've got a commitment to football. They're not even receiving a full share, folks, from the ACC in terms of media revenue. And they're like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Let's go.
That's fine.
Like, it's legitimate. It's legitimate what they could do there. And so I'm excited to watch. And a lot of people want to continue to harp on the Boston College game last year. Yeah, okay, but Preston Stone didn't play.
Game.
It's a bowl game. When you lose, we're going to use an excuse. When you win it, it's going to be great. We're going to use an excuse for the Mustangs.
Also, Boston College, totally different staff up there. They're in a different situation.
Yeah, fair.
SMU, love SMU. A lot of good things can happen for SMU this year. Gonna really enjoy keeping up with them.
I like it. All right, let's move on to another team. Very exciting. And Will, this is an over/under win total that I think is really high. Like, if I was putting money on it, I might go under.
This is interesting. Syracuse.
You started off.
New head coach Fran Brown comes in from Georgia. I think Syracuse is playing the long game with this hire. I don't think they're really concerned about what it looks like on the field in year 1. But Fran Brown, knowing he comes from Georgia, he's going to recruit and he's going to compete. Went out, make some really good additions in the portal, notably Kyle McCord to play quarterback, Fadil Diggs, edge rusher from Texas A&M. 5th best portal class in the ACC, puts him at 25th nationally. I think the big question here is how do all the transfers fit? They brought in a lot of transfer guys. I think Kyle McCord, he's a game manager, but he's a really, really good one. He's going to sit in the pocket. He's going to try to pick apart a defense. Can that offensive line stand up for him? And I think, being a good game manager, he's going to take care of the ball. He's going to keep that team in games. But, what do they look like year 1? You said it. I agree with you. I think that win total is a little high. Fran Brown is inheriting a mess at Syracuse that he's had to clean up quickly. He's done it by bringing in a ton of talent. But again, another weak schedule. I really think that they can make a bowl game. Their toughest road game, they go to NC State. Yeah. And we know the home field advantage they have in the old Carrier Dome. Tech's got to go up there. Miami's got to go there. They can do a lot of things here. But I think that win total is high, but I'm going to put their ceiling at 8-4 and their floor at 5-7. I think McCord will keep them in a lot of games.
I kind of think that Kyle McCord's getting a raw deal, with some of the public perception of what he is and what people kind of think he is. I mean, look, he was on a roster that we can all agree, like, Ohio State should have been better. They were a quarterback away, essentially, from being a national title, winning team. They had the talent everywhere else. So I think McCord is kind of, a victim of the public perception that he's just, whatever. You bring him down to Syracuse where maybe he's more comfortable. Look, we talk about all the time in other sports, Will, he gets that, kind of refreshing new opportunity where
Change of
now he can
scenery.
flourish, that change of scenery. I think McCord can do that. I mean, he can be a game changer, like you said, at the power conference level, and I think Syracuse is a good spot for that. Look, he's got this kid named Aronde Gadsden, who is kind of this like hybrid player. I was watching some stuff on him. Guy's really, really good. You mentioned LaQuint Allen, 1,000-yard rusher as well. I think the bottom line with Syracuse is Fran Brown has obviously elevated the talent level there. Now, the question is that going to be consistent enough to win week in and week out? That I don't know. I think it's the long game, like you said. I think there's a seriousness at Syracuse that hasn't been there in quite a bit, but they're playing, like you said, for 2-3 years out in the future. But the talent level has definitely been raised with what they want to do up there in New York. So I'm excited to watch them. I think they're going to be a fun team to watch, not a ton of consistency. I've got their ceiling. I believe we were kind of looking at this. I think if things hit right, like really right for them, maybe 7-5, 8-4. And then, after that, I'm going to go 5-7 because I think they could miss a bowl game if things don't go well.
Yep. I agree. So I actually skipped one, but we won't have to spend too much time on them. The Stanford Cardinal.
You skipped 2, technically, I guess. No, you didn't. You didn't. Stanford. Okay, let's just get this out of the way. Not going to be a video. Over under 3.5. I think they're absolutely terrible. And I will say this too about Stanford. Let's just be completely for real and honest. Have you guys seen? If not, go over to gostanford.com. They name their head coach is not even called a coach.
Yeah, what is he? He's director of football.
This
He's
is
also his own offensive coordinator.
He is the Bradford M. Freeman director of football, the Andrew Luck director of offense, and the Kevin Hogan quarterbacks coach. Wild. Okay, all I'm going to say is I think this is probably the weakest team to enter the ACC. They're going to kill it in Olympic sports. Golf is going to be unbelievable. It's going to be crazy. Stanford's like the team that you bring in and the guy you bring in the basketball team to raise the GPA. That's what they're here for. Floor 2-10, ceiling. Well, we looked at this. I genuinely don't know how you find more than 4 wins on the schedule right now.
No, I don't see it happening.
So, yeah, that's it.
Get that away from me.
All right, so Virginia, another quick one.
They'll be quick.
You would ask you the question? Do you regret on Auburn passing on Tony Elliott?
Not at all. I never wanted Tony Elliott to begin with. Now I know things have been kind of messy for him at Virginia. I think he's a good offensive coach. But no, as far as Auburn goes, no. Another team, you look at their schedule, maybe they get to 6-7 wins, but probably not. You're probably looking at a 2 or 3 win team here too.
So they had Malik Washington last year. He was a fun player to watch. They don't have him. It's going to be a battle between Anthony Calandri and Tony Muskett at the quarterback position. I think if everything hits right for them, I'm going to give them 6 wins in the bowl game. If not, I'm going to say 4-8, 3-9. I mean, I just don't. I don't know what's there. Okay, let's move on from this, please. I can't look at that anymore.
Yeah.
All right. Honestly, we saved maybe one of the best talking points for last. Will, I'm gonna take the lead on this one because we were walking through this. I understand the Virginia Tech hype. I completely get it. Yeah. When you start to look at what they're bringing back to the table, a lot of times people will sit there and say, well, you know what? Every time when you return production, it doesn't necessarily mean a return experience. It's not always the best thing. Well, Virginia Tech's returning experience and productive experience. That's the combination that I think when you look at what this team can do. Just a couple things here for you. We're not even going to get into the quarterback talk yet, but they return all their offensive linemen, plus one of the best Sun Belt offensive linemen they bring in Montavious Cunningham from Georgia State. Basil Tootin, the 2023, first off, he's got to be on the all-name team with a name like that. 2023 All-ACC third-team guy. He found the end zone 10 times, averaged over 5 yards a carry. They have an ability to really be special. Defensively, look, they lost 2 of their top defensive tackles, but they got Kamari Copeland, Kevin Gilliam Jr., and one of Duke's better players and one of the better players in the ACC last year in Anais Peebles. They got to shore up tackling. Defense has to play a little bit better, but there's a reason. I mean, Will, the schedule's completely manageable for what they want to do. It feels like Brent Pry is starting to build it the right way. And last year's 7-win team, you would say, hey, pretty solid defensively, pretty solid offensively. Kyron Drones, a lot of people think, Will, that he could be a guy that could take you to Charlotte. They're a trendy pick when you kind of look at some of Vegas's odds. Your thoughts, though, on what Virginia Tech brings to the table? That over-under win total set at 8 right now.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that they're the only one that is at a flat number. They don't get a half either way. I like what they've got at quarterback, Kyron Drones. A lot of discussion about him on the Discord today.
Yeah.
Just go back and join the Discord. Go back and read that.
Yeah.
It's very interesting stuff. I think it's kind of dependent on his development. Like you said, very gettable schedule. I think there's a lot of boom or bust potential here. I'm looking at a ceiling of 10-2 and a floor of 6-6. Maybe Drones stalls in his development. Maybe some of these transfer guys don't work out. Very possible. Drones doesn't have a great yards per carry, so who knows what they're going to look like.
Only 5 yards a pop. 4.9. I'm sorry. No, look, I mean, last thing on Virginia Tech here as we talk about, like, there's obvious reasons for what you're bringing to the table, why people are excited about it. I mean, you've done it the right way. Virginia Tech is a place that really, for the sake of college football and the sake of the ACC, Blacksburg has to become a tough place to play again. I mean, they need that juice, that energy up there. And so, look, 6'2", 235, almost 240 pounds. Drones is a guy who can be dual threat for you. He's a playmaker. Now, the biggest question mark, like we talked about, is he just going from a good athlete and going to stay at that level, or does he become more of a polished passer, a polished kind of quarterback in that stage of his development? And if he does, I could see Virginia Tech with that schedule being last year's Louisville, hands down, easy. And it's not just a knock on their schedule. Like, they do have a good football team. They're going to benefit, though, from a schedule that misses a lot of the big dogs in the conference.
Yeah. They another dark horse, but what does Kyron Drones look like? That's the big question.
That's all. That's it, right?
That's it. One more.
But one more. Oh, you had to do this.
Demon Deacons. Another team. You look at their schedule, you think about what they're bringing back. Do they even get to these 4 wins? They go out of conference. They play Ole Miss. Who thought to schedule Ole Miss? They might be looking for another job. I don't see any way that they're any better than 6-6. You're probably looking at a 3-win team, maybe another 2-win team here. Wake Forest is just, they don't have the talent to compete.
They bring in Hank Bachmeier to be the quarterback up there. I mean, I remember the game when Boise State came down and played Florida State, and Boise State players were passing out in August. A couple of years, like Bachmeier's freshman year, whatever it was. He's 22-16 as a starter. He's got 51 touchdown passes to 21 interceptions throughout his career. I mean, I think that you're seeing the end of an old shield of ACC coaches, and I think Wake Forest is one of those teams that's going to be potentially in the search after this year. But I
agree. They just don't have the talent level.
Yeah, as True Seminole says here, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with Pitt, Stanford, and there in Wake Forest. I think that's your bottom 3 teams. Virginia has some upside, but it's just too many questions as me. So that's our bottom dwellers, folks. We really appreciate it. That was a really, really long one. 17 teams we just went through live on stream. We appreciate you tuning in here on a Tuesday night. If you're a first-time viewer or watcher to the show, a couple of things. Hit that subscribe button. You can catch all of our live shows on a playlist, but we also kind of cut up these individual shows, and you can check out, go back and hear what we said on specific teams as well. As always, if you're watching over on Twitter or the artist now known as X, you can also head over to YouTube and, give us a subscription, completely free for you to do, and join the community down there below as well on Discord. If you're listening to this, bravo. You've just made it 1 hour and 35 minutes listening to this podcast. We appreciate you, and we can't wait to continue to bring you content every single day over on the YouTube channel. And make sure you stay tuned to whether it's Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your audio podcast there as well. He is Will Mannis. My name is Bryce Kuhn. We appreciate you watching. Ralph Leary traversing the dangerous roads of Hamilton, Georgia tonight. We appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we will catch you next time here on the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Kuhn.